Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gregory, and this is ACC 4620, Auditing and Assurance 2. And we're going to begin Chapter 7, which is Planning the Audit, Identifying, Assessing, and Responding to the Risk of Material Misstatement. But before we get into the actual chapter on areas such as materiality and such, I wanted to do a quick overview of how to locate some of the information that you might find helpful in the Pcaob. Now, the Pcaob was established as a result of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. And in that time, Congress set up legislation to provide some protections to shareholders of publicly traded companies. They also added some requirements into the preparation of financial reports. And under Title I of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which I have down at the bottom, and I will post this in the readings to go into the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. I believe there are 8 titles, but Title I and Title IV are the most important that I find as an auditor. So under Title I, you have to register all the accounting firms of your public companies, because we have some requirements now of accounting firms and how we have auditor rotation requirements. So all accounting firms need to be registered. Title I also is the establishment of the auditing, the quality control of audits, and the ethical standards for all of these registered accounting firms that perform audits of publicly traded companies, as well as the responsibility for the investigation and disciplinary action of audit firms as a result of any violation of laws or public standards. And that is to help prevent what happened to Arthur Andersen back in the 2000s, when they were found in violation of breach of ethical standards between their company and Enron. Pcaob was established through Sarbanes-Oxley, and as a result, Pcaob cites COSO principles and standards as their framework for the purposes of that Section 404 compliance, which is part of Title IV. Now, just really quickly, under Title IV of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and again, you can look for it yourself if you go to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act.com site. Title IV talks about the disclosures and financial reporting and the transactions that involve management and the principal shareholders, including provisions for sound internal controls over the financial reporting. And it establishes requirements for companies that state we take responsibility for the financial reports produced by the company, because they are required, they take ownership of their financial reports and state that they have maintained adequate internal controls. And then the external auditors must then test that and see if that comes to fruition. So here we see just kind of the lineage of the Pcaob integrating the COSO principles, and one component is that risk assessment. Then if you go to the Pcaob website and look up ASS 2110, you can see how they have how the Pcaob has created standards to identify and assess risks of material misstatement. And risk is the biggest thing we have to look at. And that means we understand the company and the industry, and we look to see where we might have material misstatement going on in the financial statements. And we've gone over Pcaob back in chapter 6, but I just wanted to show you exactly where it falls in the cube. And if you look on the third dimension of the cube, we have the entity, the division, the operating unit, and the function. This is within the company. So risk assessment flows through the entire company. So it starts at the entity, the entire company wide, the division, for example, the finance division, the operating unit, for example, accounts payable, and finally down to the function. And the function could be developing and sending out payments on accounts payable liabilities. So risk assessment's got to flow all the way through each of these components in order to meet the requirements of an audit. Now, here are just some screenshots that I created so that you could see sort of how we come to the standards to look at. So up here, you've got Pcaob, oversight standards, auditing standards. You can go into that link and you will see all of the oversight standards and particularly the auditing standards. And it talks about how the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was first established, and underneath that act was the Pcaob that creates the auditing standards for the audits. And we also have great booklets here on the standards for audits of financial statements for those that fiscal years ending on or after December 15th, 2020. So we can see that they are constantly updating these standards and producing a booklet to actually help you walk through those standards. Now, if we go into audit procedures, we'll see that there's the audit planning and risk assessment. And if you click on that plus button, you'll see the 2100 auditing planning and a risk assessment. And these are the auditing standards. So let's go in and take a look at this one really quickly. We have the consideration of material planning and performing in an audit, but here's the risk assessment for material misstatement. So if you go into AS2110, you can see that there are some amendments, the adopting releases, and an in-depth review of the table of contents and the guidance for identifying and assessing risks of material misstatement. So as we're going over chapter 7, go back to this and take a look at it. Just casually run through it and see the types of different areas that the system is calling out through this. So I just wanted to bring this really quick video to you on how to get into the Pcaob and look up these standards that we're going to be referencing further on in our term. I want you to have a great week, and do reach out if you have any questions at all.